Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Shinecast studio. We have a special guest today, Brett Knight. He is the author of From the Gavel to Gray. Welcome to our studio today, Brett.
Well, it's good to be here. I appreciate you having me on here, and exciting time. Getting a book to come out, it's exciting for me, and seems like it's been a long time coming, but I'm glad for it to be coming out, and I appreciate you having me on here to talk about it.
hmm It's a good book. Hey, tell us a little bit about tell the audience about yourself. It's for those that may not know
Okay.
about you, which is probably not that many. I mean, that's probably a lot of people know who you are. But tell them about yourself and how you got to this point.
Sure, absolutely. Well, people encounter me in different capacities. Like a lot of people, I wear a lot of different hats, and for a lot of people, they probably know that I'm an attorney. I have a law practice here in Cookville where I practice along with two other attorneys, Don Fry, Kyle Richardson, and I handle primarily the criminal cases for
hmm
the law firm. And so I've been doing that for quite a while, handling criminal cases in the Upper Cumberland, Putnam County, and the surrounding 6 counties around here. So a lot of people know me as that. I'm also a pastor. I work in a lot of work in recovery ministry. So I do a lot of work outside of the courtrooms. I working with people who are in recovery,
Okay.
and I live in Rickman, Tennessee. So it can't get any better than that,
I know it right up the road
right?
here,
That's
real
right. That's right.
close.
That's right.
So, what inspired you to write this book? I mean, how was your journey laid out for you?
Okay. Well, it's not something that I ever thought about or set out. Hey, one day I want to write a book. That I did never even crossed my mind, and until probably a couple years ago, it really was impressed on me that this kind of information needed to be shared. I sat in my conference room or sometimes in my living room, just depending on the environment, with a lot of people who are dealing with the impact and the effects of addiction and recovery. A lot of times I'm talking with a mother or a father, a husband, a wife, a brother, a sister, and they're asking these questions. They don't understand what has happened to my son. Where did
hmm
my son go? And so I'm having these conversations about what addiction looks like, what recovery looks like, giving people hope about the testimonies of people who have recovered and who have come back and their lives have been restored. And then I have this experience in the courtroom of what it looks like in the courtroom for people who are charged with cases that involve drugs and alcohol, which is a lot, by the way.
hmm
It probably wouldn't surprise you. It may surprise some people who are watching this, but it wouldn't surprise you that 80% of people who are incarcerated in the state of Tennessee, it involves drugs and alcohol. 80% of people incarcerated.
That is
That
insane.
is right. And so you think about 80% of the people who are going into the jail system or the prison system, their charges involved something to do with drugs and alcohol. So working in the courtrooms, you can't help but be impacted by
hmm
it. And I realized I had this information, and there were families that were literally dying to get this information. Their families were falling apart. Their communities were falling apart because they didn't have this information. They didn't have this hope. And so I knew that this information needed to be shared, and you can only share so much on a short, meme or a social media post, and you can't sit down in your living room with everybody across the country. And so writing the book is where that came from.
hmm
That idea, being able to share that information, provide that hope, to talk with people about it, and to be quite honest, I'm not subtle at all about it, and to enlist more help.
exactly.
People who are in the community, people who are in business, people who are out there. What can you do to help other people in this
Right.
system or this systematic destruction of our community? Because nobody in our community can say that they're not impacted by drugs and alcohol and addiction.
By a family member or whoever it may be, a
Yeah,
child or whatever,
absolutely. A neighbor or victim of a crime.
co-worker. Yeah.
Yeah, it's everywhere. I don't know that I could sit down in even a very small group of people and nobody in that group would be impacted by it.
So, spending all the years you did in a courtroom as a prosecutor and an attorney, when did you realize that punishment alone wasn't going to work?
Well, I don't think it. I don't think it took very long to realize that as much effort as being done to try to fix a problem, and there's a ton of effort in our court systems. I applaud all the judges, the advocates, the prosecutors, the attorneys. social workers, people who are trying. But it doesn't take long being in the system to recognize that we're a little bit of a revolving wheel, that we're seeing the same people come back,
Mm-hmm.
same people come back. People go out and then they come right back into the system. That something we were doing was not having as much of an impact as what we hoped that it would have. So
Right.
early on, even as a prosecutor, I remember looking and seeing something's not working within this system. And I was fortunate. Have been fortunate my entire career to be surrounded by great mentors and people who were willing to spend time with me to help me to understand
Mm-hmm.
other ways of handling these situations, or to see it from a different perspective. And so I can think even early on in my career, having those people that helped me to see that there has to be a better way than just punishment. Punishment alone cannot be the only solution that we're doing in dealing with addiction and getting people into recovery. And in fact, that was one of the statements that began this book, which was, you can't punish away pain. Once I realized and I dove into the root cause of so many people who are in addiction being trauma, specifically even
Mm-hmm.
childhood trauma, and that often leads to the numbing of that pain, that what we were trying to do was punish the pain rather than try to heal it. And that became the main line that runs through from the beginning to the end of this book.
Wow. Yeah, it's like you said, you can't punish pain away.
No.
What case or person, I mean, I guess, shattered your presumptions when it came to addiction, and I guess how the court handled it?
Well,
Uh,
there was, I think maybe it was just the avalanche of so many that probably made the biggest impact. But there were, I mean, the book is full of examples, and there was
mm-hmm.
example after example of individuals' lives, both victorious lives, those that found freedom in
Mm-hmm.
recovery. But there was also so many times where people were left behind. I can think of a man in particular who had served our country, and he had come back from combat missions, and he never came back the same. And he, like so many people who were dealing with the pain, turned to drugs and alcohol, and the system just never could figure out what to do with him. And so there's examples like that over and over again where the system just didn't know. And it's not a critique of our justice system. I
Mm-hmm.
say all the time, we have the best justice system anywhere in the world. I know that for a fact. I've worked in it long enough. We have an amazing justice system, but our system was never meant to heal people. That's not what it was
It
meant to
was
do.
built on punishment.
It was, and it was never meant. And so many times, I think in recent years, we have funneled everything into our court systems, and we've asked the court to become the nanny, the parent, the arbitrator between a husband and wife. We've asked the court to do so much, and when it comes to addiction, we expect that the court system is somehow going to magically be able to heal these people of these traumas, and that was never the court's role. Which is
No.
why you see me, although I'm a huge fan of things like drug court and veterans court and things like that, you see me working so much in the outside agencies, because those agencies can function in a way that the courts were never meant to, and they'll never be
Right.
able to because of the volume that the
Mm-hmm.
courts handle.
So I used to be a drug and alcohol counselor,
Okay.
and I realize at some point it comes down to accountability. But
Sure.
how do I get to that accountability when my life is so messed up to begin with?
Right.
It's finding something to be the basis of your accountability.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And you have to begin small.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes, and I see parents and family members that do this sometimes, they say, my son's sober now. He's been sober for a week. Why is he not making good decisions? Why is he not staying within the proper boundaries? Why is he not holding himself accountable? Well, first of all, you have to have something to hold yourself accountable to, some
Mm-hmm.
firm foundation in which you're holding yourself accountable to. And you have to realize that there's a gradual healing process that has to take
Mm-hmm.
place. It's not a one-step process, and it takes a while. It took a while for the synaptic nerves in your brain to not be firing
Mm-hmm.
properly, and for decisions to not be being made properly. It took a while, and it takes a while for your body to rebound from that. but it does begin. You have to have that firm foundation, that sole focus for accountability, and
Mm-hmm.
then from there, that trust begins to develop. And once that trust is developing, that circle of accountability begins to come out further. Pretty soon, you begin to trust others around you, counselors and mentors and pastors and people that, and then eventually grows out to family and to people you work with, and
Mm-hmm.
you begin to grow that circle.
And finding a way with dignity to do that is very important.
Yes, yes, because shame, addiction will surely kill people through
Mm-hmm.
overdose. But I've seen shame kill just as many people.
Oh yeah.
I've seen the shame absolutely kill people. And people, maybe think, I've never thought about that. How does shame kill somebody? Well, shame kills somebody when they're not willing to reach out for help because they're too ashamed. They don't think they think they've gone too far and that nobody can help them, and that nobody wants to help them, and that they're useless. That shame keeps them from reaching out for help. That shame keeps them from reaching out through faith. That shame, oftentimes, when somebody relapses,
Mm-hmm.
shame becomes the killer, because when they relapse, they're so ashamed that they step back and they've let people down, and they think people will be disappointed in them, and then they don't seek help during those moments of relapse or those moments of temptation, and that shame can oftentimes lead to their death.
Exactly. And that's where God and grace and redemption play a
Absolutely.
big role.
Absolutely. I work exclusively in the faith-based recovery community, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the reason why. Because oftentimes that pain and that damage that's within somebody, I know, having walked with them through that, I know, and I've seen it's a God-shaped hole that's in their heart.
Mm-hmm.
And they try to fill it with pills, and they try to fill it with things coming out of needles, and they try to fill it with relationships and hate and anger, and you can try to fill it with each and everything, but it's a God-shaped pain, and only God can fill that God-shaped pain, and then the healing process begins.
So the message would be, yeah, we can't depend on each other like we can God.
No.
But once we understand, and this is where I come in, where I was a drug and alcohol counselor for a
Mm-hmm.
long time, that God is here and He wants to forgive you.
Yeah,
He wants to put you back on the right
that's right.
path.
That's right.
And it doesn't matter what the rest of us think.
That's right.
It
That's
only
exactly right.
matters what He thinks.
Yeah, the Bible tells the story of the prodigal son, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the father, in that story, which is like God when we're coming back to him, he ran to meet his son. He didn't wait for his son, and snub his son or anything. He
Mm-hmm.
ran to his son, and it didn't matter that the prodigal son's brother was frustrated and feeling like he was jealous at the attention, or it didn't matter what other people thought. His
Right.
father came running, and I think that is so key for people in recovery to realize that they still have that father who still wants to come running to them, who still wants to receive them, who loves them as much on their worst day as he will on their best day. It
Exactly.
doesn't, his love never changes. And then to learn to trust and to see glimpses of that love that God has for them in
Mm-hmm.
other people. And then you begin to see and recognize that love in other people, and you begin to be able to trust those people in that capacity. But it's never the same as trusting your father.
That's a good segue into this one. What does addiction, what is the lie of addiction, and how does it, I guess, cause people to, I guess, fall further down into that addiction? What would you say that causes?
Well,
Or
I think the biggest lie of addiction is that you've gone too far, that you can't be redeemed, that you have done something that you cannot account for. I've used needles. I've done things under the influence of addiction that I'm ashamed of. I have slipped too far, and I'm no longer part of society.
mm-hmm.
I'm no longer part of my family. I'm no longer part of anything that matters. I've gone too far, and I think people, I know that people that are in addiction, they feel that way. And sometimes as society, we give them that message that they've
Exactly.
gone too far and that they
Mm-hmm.
cannot be redeemed. But, and I even have addressed in my book at times that, we as Christians, we who claim and profess the name of Jesus Christ, we also sometimes have lost that grace somewhere along the way, that
Mm-hmm.
compassion somewhere along the way, that the Bible teaches that there is no There is no place in which you could go so far into addiction that he is not there ready to redeem you, because it was never our sanctification anyway. It was
Mm-hmm.
always Jesus. And so there, I think that's the lie, and I think that lie oftentimes keeps people from, again, seeking help. It's also a convenient lie, and I'm not
Yeah.
easy with people who are in active addiction. I'm not easy with them in saying that's an easy lie for you to say. I've gone too far. Sometimes it's an easy lie because you just don't want to do the work it's going to take to get you out of the hole that you've dug.
Mm-hmm.
There is, along with grace comes accountability, and there are things that you have to do to make amends, and there are
Mm-hmm.
things, and some of that is you have to climb your way out of a hole. Now there's people who, as I've often say, there are people who will jump down in that 10-foot hole with you, and we'll get the boards and I'll help you, we'll make a ladder, but
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have to climb out of this hole. I'm going to help you make that ladder. Other people are going to help you. We're going to show you the way. We're going to show you people at the top of that hole that have gotten out of that hole, to show you that it can be done. But there does
Mm-hmm.
come a point where that person has to put their foot up on the rungs of the ladder and start climbing.
Yeah, they got to make that decision on their own at that point, and but there is a solid ground you can hit.
Absolutely.
You just got to seek that right ground
That's
and
right.
take that ground
Absolutely.
back
100%.
that you lost.
Yes.
What are you hoping people will get from the book, or how do you want them to feel about the book, or what would they get from it would be what you're trying to accomplish?
Well, there were really three goals I had with this book. One, I wanted to get in the hands of people who were seeking recovery, because I wanted them to see hope. And I don't think you can read this book and all the testimonies of people, family members, people who've gone through addiction, people who are working in recovery, without seeing the hope. There is just tons of hope in this book. And I wanted people who are seeking recovery to see that hope. The second thing is, and was to get it into the hands of family members and loved ones who needed to understand what was happening to their loved one. Majority of this book, when I wrote it, I was picturing in my mind writing this to a mother.
Mm-hmm.
That was just my
Oh
that was
yeah,
just who I was focused on a lot when I was writing this, was to get this information to their hands. What is
sure.
happening with your son, your daughter? And so that was the second goal. And the third goal is this, and I deal with it mainly towards the end of the book, which is I want this book to open up doors, to have conversations in places where these conversations about addiction and recovery aren't happening yet.
Right.
And some of those are churches that haven't opened their doors up to recovery friendly community, to people in ministries, to people in civic organizations, to elected officials, to courtrooms, to all of
Law
the
enforcement.
law enforcement, to all of those places
Mm-hmm.
where we could be having a real meaningful, productive conversation about what recovery looks like and what it doesn't look like. I wanted this book to open up that door, to be able to have invitations to go and talk with these groups, and to
Mm-hmm.
bring people to give testimonies about what could happen. And so I really, the third thing I wanted was for this book to open up those doors.
Have you saw anything, or have you ever experienced anything in the courtroom that's haunted you from the past?
Yeah, lots of times. I know for a fact that I would not be working in recovery if it wasn't um, for God through the Holy Spirit inspiring me to do so and equipping me to do so.
Mm-hmm.
This was never on my playbook, was never something that I felt like I was meant to do or wanted to do. It was something that God opened my eyes for me to be able to see. And having being able to see that, part of that, knowing that is a calling on my life, is being able to endure some of the things that haunt me. Because, to be quite straightforward, if I didn't have that, some of these experiences are so haunting that I would have just simply walked away and said there's easier things to do in life
Mm-hmm.
than to deal with this. And I think and I could pick out dozens of instances, but there's one that comes to mind, and it was kind of almost a spark at the beginning of writing this book. And there was a young lady who I got to know. I actually represented her in court, and she had a drug problem, and she wanted help. And I was able to, through the court system and through a furlough, the court was able to get her into a recovery program. And she went to this program, and I was able to remain active in her life. She came to
Mm-hmm.
the church where I was pastoring at. And so I was able to, and the other women at the program did, and I was able to watch her, and I was there when she accepted the Lord. I actually baptized her myself.
Wow,
So I
that's awesome.
baptized her. So I had represented her, helped her get into a program, was walking with her through that program, baptized her, and she was doing so great. And then, as often happens, and this is where the haunting part comes in, that sometimes people get out into the community and they lose that circle of accountability, and they get back
Mm-hmm.
with the old circle that drags them down, because that old circle wants you to fail, because people in that old circle, they want to be able to justify the fact that they haven't succeeded in
Right.
being sober. So they want you to fail, so that makes them feel better about the fact that they never tried. And it's a work of the devil. It's a work of Satan, that to draw people back into that. And this young lady, that's what happened to her. She got back with that circle, and she got back to using again, and she went back to jail on violation of probation. And I saw her in jail. And I remember I was with some other clients. I walked by, and she was in a holding cell. And I saw her when I walked by, and she lowered her head down when she saw me. And there was that shame again, right? There was
Mm-hmm.
that shame. And I remember stopping, and I asked the officer, I said, "Can you open the door and let me into the holding cell?" And I went into there, and I told her, I said, "Don't ever feel like you have to hold your head down when you see me. I'm not ashamed of you. I'm still here with you." And I just wanted to encourage her. Well, she served some time that she needed to serve, and she got back out into the community when she got out of jail. And 3 days later, she overdosed and died. And I preached her funeral. So that haunts you.
Oh yeah.
That haunts you when you walk with somebody through, and they're that close to the permanent breakthrough, and they get pulled back in. And that's how nefarious, that's how dangerous addiction is. And that's the stakes that we are battling. And so it's in those haunting moments that you're haunted, but then you also realize what the consequence, what the price is if you're not out there. And I say this at the end of the book, and I try to draw people to, that's the consequences if we don't get involved. The consequences are they die.
Right.
Oftentimes they die. And so yeah, you get haunted by those, and there's days where you think, Lord, let me do something easier. Let me do something with less pain and less suffering involved. But that's where he calls us. He calls us to those trenches.
And accountability and love go hand in hand,
Absolutely.
because as a parent, we teach our kids
Absolutely right.
accountability and we love our kids unconditionally.
Absolutely.
We need to show that to each other, even in our worst times. And I think there's a lot of people in this community that do.
Yes.
But sometimes the churches can fail.
Yes.
They can push decent people away who are struggling, who are actually seeking God.
Yes.
I mean, they may not have believed in him before and everything. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I 100% believe that we have to embrace these people who are seeking after God, and not expect them to have cleaned themselves before showing up to us in the
That's
churches.
the whole point.
That's the whole point. And
Right.
again, I'll go back to our prodigal son story. The father didn't make the son take a bath before he embraced him.
Mm.
That son came straight from the pig pen, ran to the father. I imagine
Mm-hmm.
he smelt like pigs.
Mm-hmm.
And the father never said, "Go take a bath, put on clean clothes.
Then I'll hug you.
Then I'll hug you." He embraced him, and then he took his robe and put it on his son,
Mm-hmm.
and his ring and put it on his son. And I think that's the example for us as Christians, that we shouldn't be expecting nor desiring that people have to clean themselves before they present themselves. Now, I'm a firm believer in love and accountability. I say all the time, come as you are, but don't expect to stay that way.
Right.
And there's growth and there's discipleship in there. But when they come in the door, and I know there's going to be pastors who are going to absolutely disagree with me. This may be the most controversial thing I say on this podcast,
Mm-hmm.
but I have said it before. I don't care if the needle falls off your arm before you walk into the church. If I'm preaching there, you're welcome, because that is where God will encounter them and God will change them.
I agree with that to a certain level, because here's the deal. Even if you're a druggie, how did you end up there?
Yeah.
you had that, you were seeking God and fighting that
Yes,
addiction at the same
absolutely.
time.
Absolutely. Where else do you want somebody who's struggling with sin? Where
Hmm.
else do you want somebody who's struggling with a difficulty? I want them in church. I
Right.
want them seeking the one who can give them the answer and the healing. And it's not me, it's the God who redeemed me that I
Right.
want to introduce them to. So I don't know that there's a condition so bad that I don't want them to encounter Jesus. And
Right. I
so
want them to encounter him because he is the one who breaks the chains.
absolutely.
He's the
Absolutely.
only one that
He's
can.
the one who's going to set them free, and he's one that's going to heal them and redeem them completely and fully and finally.
I used to love when I was working as a drug and alcohol counselor, people would write me years later and said, "You were firm, but you were always nice," because we would have them follow the program.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
And I'd say, "It's all up to you. Are you serious about it?"
Hmm.
But I think encountering God is the main solution.
Absolutely. Absolutely, it is. Absolutely, it is. And my role in dealing with people is in the early stages of it is even in those early stages when they have not yet encountered Jesus, they have not yet
Hmm.
encountered God, is for them to see a glimpse of God through me and how I treat them, how
Hmm.
I love them, how I don't judge them, how I look for a way for them to get a second chance. I want them to see, look, I'm nowhere near perfect and nowhere near everything that I'm supposed to be. But I hope that when people encounter me in those situations, they feel like some of the love of God that's filled me has flowed out onto them. And
Right.
and so that's what I think we as Christians should be doing is introducing them to this man named Jesus who changed my life and he'll change yours too, and showing them what it looks like to try to walk that path and to
Exactly.
live that life accountable, not just to ourselves and what we want to accomplish, but to a higher calling.
I've seen quite a few people turn their lives around. Not even the same person once they
Absolutely.
encounter Jesus.
Absolutely.
They're who they were supposed to be in the beginning.
That's it. The identity and their purpose got lost somewhere. It didn't get taken from them because drugs don't have the power to take your identity and they don't have the power to take your purpose because God gave them to you, so they don't have the power to take it. But they can be obscured. They can be hidden from you. They can be covered up with the mud that you throw on them.
Delayed.
Yeah,
Hmm.
delayed, but it is still there. And you're right. I can think of so many men and women who years ago when I met them, they were in addiction. They were in the courtrooms, and then they were able to get an opportunity, and I was able to see that transformation take place. And then now I see them. I just saw one man I'm thinking of, and he was on vacation with his wife and their son and their brand new baby that they've got. I see these people who are in life and they're doing things right. They just got promoted. They're buying their house for the first time ever. They've gotten their license back. A lady here recently, it took her 21 years, but she got her GED.
Wow, that's
21 years
awesome.
where she
Yeah.
didn't get a or high school diploma, but she got her GED. So watching these people turn it around, we talked about the haunting things and the bad things that you sometimes encounter working on these front lines. But then there's those
Hmm.
people who call me their family, and I called them my family.
Right.
But years ago we met while they were at their darkest moments, and now I have these people who they're like an extended family. They show up to my birthday. We
Hmm.
see each other on the street. I run into them at Walmart, and people who maybe I haven't seen for a year or more come up and they'll give me a big hug and they're like, I'm still sober. I'm still working the program. I'm still doing the right thing, and that makes it all worthwhile
So joy and hope outshine addiction.
every time, every time.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about your book and tell us where you can
Okay.
find this awesome book?
Well, the on May 26th, that's as we're sitting here today. That's less than a week away. Um, on that Tuesday, it's going to become available on Amazon, and it's going to be the soft cover, hardcover, ebook, Audible. If you like listen to audiobooks, all of those are going to be available. So everybody will be able to get a copy of it through there. I've had some early releases that I've given out to some people in ministries and to kind of get an early release to get some feedback on it. But
Hmm.
it's going to be available to everybody on May 26th. And the whole purpose, again, of this book was was to get it into the hands of as many people as possible. So I hope these books are read and handed down. I hope they are shared. I hope churches are reading excerpts out of it on their Wednesday Bible studies, and they're talking about how they can start up ministries. I hope, elected officials are reading it. I hope pastors are reading it and looking deep into their heart, what they can better do. Because again, I don't think there is a community in this country that can't benefit from some of this information. It's not that I wrote this book that's just so amazing. It's the information in there is just going to help people. It's just information that's available. I've happened to walk this life where on one half of my life, I'm working in the courtrooms every day. On the other half of my life, I'm working in ministry as a pastor. And that gives me a perspective that I want to share, a perspective of what the real world looks like, but where the hope is coming from.
Right.
And so that's what I'm able to share in the book.
And that's a great perspective. We all have perspectives, and God
Yeah.
works with us differently,
Yeah.
every one of us. So setting people free from addiction and guiding them into healing. What a great book. If you get a chance, look for this. It's coming out soon. And when did you say?
May 26th.
May 26th is a few days away. Look for this, buy it, share it, give it to a family member that may need it or a friend. And thanks for joining us today. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. We're going to have some other guests coming up soon, so keep your eye out for Highlands Insider and Cookeville Now. And may your light shine bright, and may you be free through grace and God. Amen.
Amen.